The smell of fresh coffee wafted through the kitchen of the Oak Creek estate, while the day was still rehearsing its first rays behind the Blue Ridge Mountains. Colonel Anthony Mason, 52 years old, his graying hair slicked back with pomade, had woken up at 5 in the morning, as always. He had put on his denim trousers and the white shirt that smelled of lye soap, descending for the ritual of every single day since Delilah had left. 3 years of solitude he carried like a heavy rosary in his pocket. The big house, built in 1912 by Anthony's grandfather, held that dense silence typical of August mornings in the deep interior. The hardwood floor creaked under the colonel's worn boots as he walked down the hallway toward the porch. Through the window, one could see the low mist covering the fields like a white shroud, and in the distance, the bell of the St. John's Parish Church began to toll 6 o'clock. Anthony pushed open the heavy wooden door and came face to face with something unusual. A brown envelope, folded in half, was leaning against the rocking chair where Delilah used to embroider on summer afternoons. The paper was damp from the night dew, and there was no name, no stamp, nothing but that mysterious rectangle waiting for him like a sentence. Anthony's heart gave a strange leap. In 52 years of life, 40 of them on this estate, he knew every inch of this ground, every creak of this wood, every secret of these walls. No one came up to the porch of the big house without him knowing. No one. With a trembling hand, and he hated noticing that his hand was trembling, he picked up the envelope and sat slowly in the chair. The coffee was cooling on the wicker table. Outside, the first birds were beginning their morning clamor. Anthony took a deep breath, tore the paper carefully, and unfolded the yellowed sheet inside. The handwriting was irregular, done in pencil, with letters rising and falling, as if the hand writing it were fighting against the very weight of the truth. Colonel Anthony, you have a daughter. Her name is Helen. She was born on March 15th, 1919. She is 28 years old now. Forgive me for keeping this for so long. Forgive me for what we did. Delilah made me swear, but now that she is gone too, I can no longer carry this weight alone. The girl needs you. She always has. May God forgive us all. There was no signature. Anthony read the letter once, twice, 3 times in a row, as if with each reading, the words could change meaning, reorganize into something that made some damn sense. But no. The words remained there, stubborn, impossible, shattering everything he thought he knew about his life. A daughter. Delilah. 1919. The numbers danced in his head. In 1919, he was 24 and had just returned from the capital, where he had studied law at his father's insistence. Delilah was 22, the daughter of Judge Roberts, living in the big house on Church Street. They weren't even engaged yet. They barely spoke, in truth, except at society balls and Sunday masses, always under the watchful eye of their families. How could Delilah have had a daughter that year? And more importantly, why in hell had he never known? If you are enjoying this story of mysteries in the countryside, subscribe to the channel and hit the bell so you don't miss any revelations. From which city are you watching us? Leave it in the comments. The sun was already high when old Joe, the estate foreman, knocked on the kitchen door, bringing the milking report. He found the boss still sitting on the porch, holding that letter like one holds a dead child. "Colonel," called old Joe, taking the leather hat off his head. "Are you all right, sir?" Anthony raised his eyes. Old Joe had worked there since he was a boy, had known the colonel for 30 years, and had never seen him with that expression, a mixture of terror, anger, and something bordering on despair. "Joe," his voice came out hoarse, "I need you to do something for me." Yes, Colonel, I want you to find out who left this envelope here. Ask the tenants, the drovers, any soul that passed through that gate last night. Someone saw something. Someone always sees. Old Joe took the empty envelope, examined it as if it were possible to extract some truth from that damp paper, and nodded slowly. Consider it done, Colonel. I'll find out by the end of the day. But there was no need to wait until the end of the day. It was 4 p.m. when Anthony was in his study, surrounded by estate papers he looked at without seeing, his mind far away, lost in 1919, trying to retrieve every memory of that cursed year. That was when he heard the creak of the iron gate down below. He stood up, walked to the window, and pulled back the lace curtain Delilah had made with her own hands. And then he saw her. A woman was stepping down from Mr. Thomas's buggy, the cheese seller who made the route between St. John and Silver Springs. She was thin, wearing a simple gray dress, faded, patched at the cuffs. A dark shawl covered her shoulders. She carried a bundle of cloth tied with twine in her left hand. But it was her face that knocked the air out of Anthony's lungs. Those eyes, brown, almond-shaped, with that greenish glint when the light hit them sideways, exactly like Delilah's eyes. The same curve of the chin, the same way of tilting her head to the side when looking at something, as if they had torn a piece of Delilah from 20-something years ago and placed her there, alive, impossible, standing in the middle of his estate's yard. Anthony descended the wooden staircase like a man walking in a dream. His footsteps echoed in the heavy silence of the afternoon. When he opened the front door, she was already there, 10 feet away, looking at him with the same expression as someone facing a firing squad. Fear and courage mixed in equal parts. "Good afternoon," she said, and even her voice had that musicality Delilah's had. "Are you Colonel Anthony Mason?" "I am." The silence that followed was thick as molasses. "My name is Helen," she continued, her voice trembling at the edges. "Helen Roberts Smith, Roberts, Delilah's maiden name. I received a letter this morning," Anthony stammered, and hated himself for stammering. Saying that. "I received a letter too," Helen interrupted, and then pulled a yellowed old envelope from inside her shawl, one that looked like it had been folded and unfolded 1,000 times over the years. "This one here. I received it when I was 15. It was my adoptive mother who gave it to me, on her deathbed." She held out the envelope. Anthony took it with fingers that didn't seem to belong to his own body anymore. He opened it slowly. Inside was a sheet of letterhead paper, the letterhead of the Roberts family, which he would recognize anywhere. And the handwriting, God in heaven, the handwriting was Delilah's. "To whoever cares for my daughter Helen, I write this letter in September of 1919, 6 months after the girl's birth. I handed her over to the care of Josephine and Manuel Smith, trusted tenants who accepted to raise her as a daughter. I paid them well. I paid for their silence too. No one can know. Papa would kill me. Mama would die of shame. Society would destroy us. I cannot tell even Anthony, the man I have come to truly love years later. He would never understand. No one would understand. If you are reading this, it is because Josephine has passed and the girl needs to know the truth. Tell her that her mother loved her. Tell her that there wasn't a single day I didn't think of her. Tell her that if I could go back, I would have faced the whole world to stay with her. Forgive me, Helen. Forgive your cowardly mother. Delilah Roberts, September 20th, 1919. Anthony's legs gave way. He leaned against the doorframe. The world spun, spun, spun. Delilah, his Delilah, had a daughter, hidden a daughter, given away a daughter, and never, in 15 years of marriage, never said a single word. "I didn't know," he whispered, almost voiceless. "I swear to God, I didn't know." "I know," said Helen. And there were tears in the corners of those eyes that were so like Delilah's, it hurt to look. "Her letter says that you never knew. But who is your father then?" The question came out before Anthony could think if he really wanted to know the answer. Helen's face closed off. She pulled the shawl tighter against her body, as if feeling cold, though the day was hot. "I don't know his name," she said softly. "My adoptive mother, Mrs. Josephine, told me it was someone important. Someone my biological mother met at a party in the capital before coming back to St. John. She said there was violence, that my mother had no choice." The word violence fell like a stone into a deep well. Anthony felt rage rise up his throat like bile. Delilah. His delicate Delilah, with soft hands and quiet laughter. Violated. And then, forced to hide, to lie, to give away her own daughter, because the hypocritical society of St. John's Valley wouldn't tolerate a dishonored girl, even if the dishonor hadn't been her choice. "Come in," he said, stepping away from the door. "Please, come in." Helen hesitated. She looked at the big house, at that two-story mansion that must have looked like a palace to a girl raised in the tenant shacks. Then, taking a deep breath, like someone preparing to dive into deep waters, she climbed the 3 steps and entered. The sitting room smelled of beeswax and lavender. The furniture was dark, heavy, the kind that passes from generation to generation. On the sideboard, framed photographs. Anthony and Delilah on their wedding day in 1932. Delilah in a light dress in the garden. The couple in front of the parish church. Helen stopped before the photographs, as if she had been punched. "It's her," she murmured. "My God, it's really her." "Sit down," Anthony asked, pointing to the sofa. "Please." She sat on the edge, with the rigid posture of someone not used to sitting on velvet-upholstered sofas. Anthony poured 2 glasses of fresh water from the clay pitcher. He sat in the armchair opposite, and for the first time in 3 years, since he had buried Delilah in the church cemetery, he felt she was there in the room with them. Her presence was almost tactile, almost audible, as if she were whispering, "Forgive me, forgive me, forgive me." "Tell me," he said, his voice steadier now. "Tell me everything you know." And Helen told him. She told him she grew up in the Smith's house, in the tenant quarters of the Hope Farm, 20 miles from there. That Josephine and Manuel raised her with love, but always with that heavy secret hanging over the family. That at 15, when Josephine fell ill with a lung sickness and realized she wouldn't make it through the winter, she called Helen, handed her the yellowed letter, and said, "You need to know where you came from." She told him she discovered on that terrible day in July 1934 that she wasn't a blood daughter of the Smiths, that her real mother was Delilah Roberts, the judge's daughter, married to Colonel Mason, that her biological mother lived just 20 miles away, and Helen had never known. "I wanted to look for her," said Helen, wiping a tear running down her face. "I swear I wanted to, but Papa Manuel made me promise I wouldn't. He said it would destroy her life, that society would massacre her, that you might not understand. So I kept the letter. I kept it and suffered in silence." "And when Delilah died?" Anthony asked, his voice choked. "I knew. Everyone knew. The funeral of Colonel Mason's wife was news in 3 towns. I went to the cemetery a week later, at dawn, so no one would see me. I brought wildflowers. I stood there in front of her grave and said everything I could never say. That I forgave her, that I loved her, that I understood. The silence that fell over the room was the kind that hurts the ears. But then, Anthony resumed, "If you decided never to appear, why are you here now?" Helen opened the cloth bundle she had brought. From inside, she took an envelope, not the old and yellowed one, but a new white one with her name on the front. "Because I received this 3 days ago. It was left under my door at dawn, just like you received yours today." Anthony took the letter. The handwriting was the same as the letter he had received in the morning. Irregular, trembling, done in pencil. "Helen, it is time to claim your place. Your father deserves to know the truth. And you deserve to know who really destroyed your family. Go to the Oak Creek estate. Show Delilah's letter. Do not be afraid. The truth is in St. John's Valley, hidden where no one dares to look, in the safe of the church sacristy. Ask Father Augustus about the registry of 1919. He knows everything. He always knew." Anthony read and reread those words. Father Augustus, the same priest who had married him and Delilah, the same one who had given her last rites when cancer took her, the same one who, for 40 years, had been confessor to the most important families of St. John's Valley. "Who wrote this?" Anthony asked, feeling the anger grow again. "I don't know," Helen answered, "but whoever it is knows things no one else should know." Outside, the church bell began to toll 6 in the evening. The sound echoed through the ridge, sad and long, like a warning or a sentence. Anthony stood up, walked to the window, looked at the sky beginning to gain shades of orange and pink. "Father Augustus," he said, more to himself than to Helen, "if he knows something and hid it from me for all these years." He didn't finish the sentence. He didn't need to. Helen stood up too, uncertain, her nervous hands clutching the shawl. "I didn't come here to cause trouble, Colonel," she said softly. "I came because I thought you had the right to know. But if you want me to leave, I will. I survived 28 years without a father. I can survive the rest of my life too." Anthony turned around. He looked at that thin girl in a simple dress, who had the eyes of the woman he had loved for 15 years. He looked and saw all the Sunday afternoons Helen had spent alone while he and Delilah went to Mass. He saw all the birthdays not celebrated. He saw all the hugs that were never given. "You are not going anywhere," he said, his voice firm, almost harsh. "You are staying here. This is your home as much as it was Delilah's." But you don't even know me. You don't even know if I'm telling the truth." "I look at you and I see her," said Anthony, and for the first time in 3 years, he felt tears burn his eyes. "I see every detail of her in you. I don't need any more proof. And even if I did, this letter here," he lifted Delilah's yellowed letter, "is her handwriting. I know every curve of these letters." Helen covered her face with her hands and broke down in sobs. It was 28 years of pain, rejection, secrets, and loneliness coming out all at once. Anthony took 2 steps forward, hesitated for a second, and then pulled her into a clumsy but sincere hug. "Forgive her," Helen whispered against his shoulder. "Please, forgive her. She had no choice." "I forgive her," said Anthony, and realized, with surprise, that it was true. "I forgive her, and I forgive you, and I forgive myself for not noticing. But there is someone I won't forgive easily." "Who?" "Whoever did this to her. Whoever forced her to choose between her daughter and her life in society. And the priest who kept this secret as if it were his to keep." Anthony let go of Helen and walked to the sideboard. He grabbed the black felt hat he used to go out. It was already getting dark outside, but it didn't matter. "I'm going to the church," he announced. "I'm going to talk to Father Augustus right now." "Now? But it's almost night." "I don't care if it's midnight. That man owes me an explanation. He has owed me an explanation for 28 years. Helen took a step forward, fear stamped on her face. And what if you discover things you don't want to know? Anthony stopped at the door. He turned. He looked at that girl who was his daughter, and felt a mix of desperate love and murderous fury. Then I will know, he said, because worse than knowing the truth is living in a lie. And I've already lived 28 years in a lie. I won't live even one more day. And he left. The horse was in the stable. Anthony saddled it himself, without calling any of the hands. With hands trembling from adrenaline, he mounted and spurred the animal toward the town. The dirt road cut through the estate, went down the hill, crossed the wooden bridge over the creek, and climbed up to the main street of St. John's Valley. Night had fallen completely when Anthony tied the horse in front of the parish church. The imposing structure of stone and lime rose at the top of the main square as it always had. Solid, eternal, guardian of secrets no one dared to question. Anthony climbed the stone steps. He pushed the heavy wooden door. The church was empty, lit only by the altar candles and 2 lamps on the sides. The smell of incense and wax permeated the air. "Father Augustus," he called, his voice echoing through the vaults. "Father Augustus, I know you are here." There was a noise coming from the sacristy, slow footsteps, and then the priest appeared, tall, thin, his black habit dusty, round glasses reflecting the candlelight. He must have been about 70 now, hair completely white, posture still erect. "Colonel Mason," said the priest, his voice calm, almost bored. "What a surprise to see you here at this hour." "The surprise is you still having the courage to look me in the eye," retorted Anthony, climbing the altar steps. The priest frowned. "I don't understand." "You don't understand?" Anthony took Delilah's yellowed letter from his pocket. "Then let me refresh your memory. 1919, Delilah Roberts, a girl named Helen, a secret you kept for almost 30 years. The priest's expression changed. For a fraction of a second, fear ran through those dark eyes. Then he regained his composure. "Colonel, I think we better talk in the sacristy." "I think we better talk right here, in front of God and anyone else who wants to listen. There are things that should not be said out loud, and there are things that should not be hidden." Anthony shot back, his voice rising. "You knew. From the beginning, you knew Delilah had a daughter. You knew and never told me. Not when I married her, not when she died. Never." Father Augustus sighed. He took off his glasses, cleaned the lenses with the hem of his habit, put them back on. "Sit down, Colonel," he said, pointing to the first pew. "It is a long story. I don't want to sit. I want answers. And you will have them, guaranteed," the priest, his voice now heavy with weariness. "But as I said, it is a long story. And if you really want to know the truth, you will need more than that letter. You will need to see the registry." "What registry?" The priest turned and walked toward the sacristy. Anthony followed him, his heart beating like a war drum. The sacristy was small, smelled of mold and wax. On one wall was a tall, dark wood cabinet. The priest took a key he carried on a small chain around his neck, opened the cabinet. Inside, books. Dozens of thick books, bound in leather, dusty. Parish registers dating back more than a century. The priest took one of the books, the one from 1919, and placed it on the table. He opened it to a page marked with a red ribbon, pointed to an entry. "Read," he said simply. Anthony leaned in. In the dim light of the lamp he read, "Baptism of Helen, daughter of Delilah Roberts, born on March 15, 1919. Father not declared. Baptized in private ceremony on March 20th, 1919. Handed over to the care of Josephine and Manuel Smith." Present at the ceremony, Judge Sebastian Roberts, Mrs. Amelia Roberts, Father Augustus Ferreira, and below in a different handwriting a note, request for absolute secrecy, order of Dr. Oliver Manning, under penalty of consequences. Anthony read the name 3 times. Dr. Oliver Manning, the most important doctor in St. John's Valley, owner of the Charity Hospital, friend of the governor, a man of influence and power that extended throughout the entire state. And at that very moment, like a bolt of lightning piercing a thick curtain, Anthony understood. Dr. Oliver Manning had been a special guest at the Roberts family party in the Capitol in 1918. Anthony remembered because the judge himself had commented, proudly, that he had managed to bring the illustrious doctor to be godfather to his nephew. Delilah was there. She was 21. She was beautiful, innocent, confident. "It was him," whispered Anthony, his voice broken. "It was Dr. Oliver Manning." Father Augustus closed the book carefully. "I cannot confirm nor deny," he said softly. "But I can say that Judge Roberts came to me in March 1919, desperate, asking me to baptize the child in secret and find a family to keep her. He said that if anyone knew, his daughter's reputation would be destroyed. He said that Dr. Oliver was too powerful a man to be confronted, and that if I told anyone, including Delilah's future husband, there would be terrible consequences for everyone involved." "And you accepted?" Anthony spat the words. "You, a man of God, accepted to hide a crime." "I protected an innocent girl," retorted the priest, and for the first time, there was emotion in his voice. "I protected a child. If the truth came out back then, Delilah would have been thrown out of her home, branded, destroyed. No one would believe there was violence. They would say she offered herself, that she provoked it, that she deserved it. And the girl, Helen, would grow up with the stigma of a bastard, a child of shame. So you decided it was better for her to grow up without any mother at all?" "I decided it was better for her to grow up alive and healthy than dead of hunger and shame in the streets." Anthony wanted to hit the priest, wanted to knock over that shelf, burn those registers, scream until he lost his voice. But a part of him knew, with painful clarity, that the priest wasn't entirely wrong. In 1919, in a conservative town like St. John's Valley, a violated girl was seen as dishonored, and a child born out of wedlock was condemned before even breathing its first breath. "And Dr. Oliver?" asked Anthony, forcing the words through a tight throat. "What happened to him?" "He died," said the priest, "in 1943, heart attack. He was buried as a hero, benefactor of the city, a good man." "Hero," repeated Anthony, bitter. "A rapist buried as a hero." The priest did not answer. There was no possible answer. Anthony took the register book, closed it with force. He looked at Father Augustus and saw for the first time an old and tired man who had carried too many secrets for too long. "Does anyone else know this?" he asked. The judge took the secret to the grave. "Mrs. Amelia, too. The Smiths kept their promise. And I," the priest sighed, "I kept the confessional, as it must be kept." "Then who sent these letters? Who is trying to expose all this now?" The priest shook his head. "I have no idea, Colonel. But whoever it is knows the details. And perhaps thinks the time for truth has arrived." Anthony turned and left the sacristy without another word. He crossed the church with long strides, pushed the door, descended the steps. The square was deserted. Only the cold night wind and the distant sound of a dog barking. He mounted his horse and returned to the estate with his soul in tatters and his head boiling with anger, pain, and a question that wouldn't leave him. Who had sent those letters? And why now, 3 years after Delilah's death? But what Anthony didn't know yet, and would discover soon, was that the truth about 1919 went far beyond what he imagined. And that someone, somewhere in St. John's Valley, was ready to reveal not just what happened to Delilah, but the entire web of lies and power that sustained the town's important families. The storm was just beginning. When Anthony returned to the Oak Creek estate, it was already past 10 at night. The full moon illuminated the dirt road, and the big house rose on the hill like a ship anchored in a sea of crops. There was a light on in the kitchen, the lamp he had left for Helen so she wouldn't feel alone in that house of strangers. He tied the horse in the stable, gave it water and oats, and walked slowly to the house. His steps on the gravel sounded like screams in the silence of the night. When he pushed open the kitchen door, he found Helen sitting at the table, a cup of cold coffee between her hands, her eyes red from crying. "Did you manage to talk to the priest?" she asked, her voice hoarse. Anthony took off his hat, hung it on the nail behind the door, pulled out a chair, and sat down heavily. Suddenly, he felt the weight of every one of his 52 years. "I did," he said, "and I discovered things I would prefer never to have known." He told her everything: the Paris register, the note about secrecy, the name of Dr. Oliver Manning, the party in the Capitol, the violence Delilah had suffered, and that no one, absolutely no one, had the courage to report because the man was too powerful, too important, too protected. Helen listened with hands trembling around the cup. When Anthony finished, she remained silent for long minutes, just staring at nothing, processing. "So that was it," she murmured finally. "My mother was violated by an important man, and they had to hide it. They had to hide me." "Not because they didn't love you," said Anthony, and realized he believed that, "but because society was cruel. It still is cruel. Only the names of the cruelties have changed." Helen wiped her tears with the back of her hand. "Do you hate me for existing? For being the result of that?" The question caught Anthony by surprise. He looked at that girl, his stepdaughter, his daughter of the heart, his responsibility that had arrived too late, and felt something strange squeeze his chest. "No," he said firmly, "I don't hate you. It is not your fault for being born. And if Delilah gave birth to you, if she carried you for 9 months, even knowing she would have to give you away, it is because she loved you, the way she could, the way they let her love." Helen broke down in sobs again. Anthony stood up, went around the table, placed his hand on her shoulder with the same delicacy he would touch a wounded bird. "You are going to stay here," he said, "with me, in this house. This is your place now." But what about the people? What will they say?" "Let them say what they want. I am Colonel Anthony Mason. This is my land, my house, and if I say you stay, you stay." For the first time since she arrived, Helen sketched something resembling a smile. It was weak, trembling, but it was a smile. "Thank you," she whispered. "Thank you for believing in me." Anthony nodded, picked up the lamp from the table. "Come, I'll show you your room." He led her up the stairs, down the creaking hallway, to a room at the end of the corridor. It was the guest room, but no one had used it for years. It had a double bed with a crocheted spread, a rosewood wardrobe, a small table with a pitcher and basin for washing one's face. Through the window, one could see the ridge in the distance, silhouetted against the starry sky. "Tomorrow morning, I'll ask Nancy, the cook, to bring clean sheets and tidy everything up properly, said Anthony. But for tonight, I think it will do. It does, said Helen, looking around as if she were in a palace. It will do very well. Anthony was about to leave when she called. Colonel, he stopped at the door. You can call me Anthony. Or, if you want, Dad. Helen's eyes filled with tears again, but this time they were different tears. Good night, Dad, she said, testing the word on her tongue like tasting a new food. Good night, daughter. And for the first time in 28 years, that word, daughter, was spoken inside that house. The following days were strange for both of them. Anthony wasn't used to having company after 3 years of widowed solitude. Helen wasn't used to living in a big house, with servants, with silver cutlery and fine china. They circled around each other like two wild animals learning to share the same territory. But gradually, with the slowness of things that need time to take root, they began to build a routine. Helen woke up early, a habit from years in the tenant quarters, and went down to help Nancy in the kitchen. At first, the cook, a plump and suspicious woman of 60, looked at her askance. "Who is this girl the colonel brought?" she asked the other servants. But when she saw Helen wash dishes without complaining, sweep the dirt floor, light the wood stove with the same skill as someone who had done it her whole life, Nancy began to soften. "Do you know how to make biscuits?" asked Nancy on the third day. "Yes, I do, Miss Nancy. I learned with my mother, with Mrs. Josephine. Then help me here. My back is hurting too much to knead this dough." And so, between batches of biscuits and pots of beans, Helen began to find her place. Anthony, for his part, watched from afar. He saw his daughter, and he already thought of her as a daughter, move through the house with that mix of shyness and determination. He saw gestures that were Delilah's, the way she tucked her hair behind her ear, how she tilted her head when thinking, how she bit her lower lip when concentrating. Some afternoons, when work on the estate allowed, Anthony came home early. He would sit on the porch with a coffee and call Helen to talk. "Tell me about your life in the tenant quarters," he asked. And Helen told him about Josephine and Manuel, who raised her with love, but always with that heavy secret in the air. About the cornfields, the chickens in the yard, the cold June nights when blankets were never enough. About the country dances, the saints' festivals, the weddings in the chapel. About how she learned to read with the traveling teacher who passed from settlement to settlement. About the books she borrowed and read by candlelight until dawn. "You like to read?" asked Anthony, surprised. "I do. It's the only thing that made me forget I was different from the other girls." "Different how?" Helen shrugged. "I can't explain. Just different. Like there was a part of me that didn't fit. Now I know why." Anthony remained silent, stirring his coffee with the silver spoon. "Delilah loved to read too," he said finally. "She had a whole library just for herself. It's all still there, in the room that was hers. If you want, you can take the books." Helen's eyes lit up. "Can I really?" "Of course. What is hers is yours now." That same afternoon, Anthony opened the room that had been Delilah's for the first time in 3 years. The smell of lavender still permeated the air. The dresses were still in the wardrobe. The hairbrush still had blonde strands caught in the bristles. And on the shelf, dozens of books, French novels, poetry books, history treatises. Helen entered slowly, with the reverence of someone entering a church. "Was this where she slept?" she asked softly. "It was. She spent her last months here, when the sickness got worse. I slept in that chair in the corner to be close." Helen ran her fingers over the crochet spread, the lace curtains, the books on the shelf. She picked up a volume of poetry, opened it. On the first page, a dedication in cursive. To Delilah, who loves words as much as I do. With affection, Papa. Christmas 1925. Her grandfather, said Anthony, Judge Sebastian. He died in 1930. Helen closed the book carefully, pressed it against her chest. Can I take this one? You can take all you want. She chose 3 books, hugged them as if they were treasures, and left the room with a small but real smile. Anthony stood there for a few more minutes, looking around. He felt Delilah there, almost palpable, almost audible, and for the first time, he allowed himself to be angry with her. Angry for hiding, angry for not trusting him, angry for dying without telling the truth. But deep down, very deep down, he knew. Delilah had done what she thought she had to do to protect everyone, even if it meant destroying a piece of herself in the process. If you are moved by this story, leave a like down below. Could you live in that era with so many secrets and judgments? Tell us in the comments. It was on Friday, a week after Helen's arrival, that the town started talking. Mrs. Caroline, owner of the store on the main square, spread it to anyone who would listen. Colonel Mason brought a girl to live with him, a tenant girl. No one knows who she is, but I think it's very strange. A widower with a young girl in the house. Very strange indeed. The gossip spread like fire in dry pasture. At Sunday Mass, the whispers started before the priest even ascended the altar. When Anthony entered the church with Helen by his side, the silence that fell over the faithful was heavy as lead. They sat in the front pew, where the Masons always sat. Helen kept her eyes down, hands clutching the rosary that had been Josephine's. Anthony, on the contrary, looked around with a defiant expression, almost daring someone to say something. No one said a word, but the looks said everything. After Mass, at the church exit, Mrs. Caroline couldn't resist. She approached with her satisfied viper face. "Good morning, Colonel. What a surprise to see you accompanied," she said with false sweetness. "Aren't you going to introduce us to the young lady?" Anthony placed a protective hand on Helen's back. "This is Helen," he said with a clear voice so everyone around could hear. "My stepdaughter, daughter of Delilah." The effect was immediate. Mrs. Caroline's eyes went wide. The other ladies on the church steps looked at each other, incredulous. Some men frowned, confused. "Daughter of Mrs. Delilah?" repeated Mrs. Caroline. But you didn't have children." "Delilah had a daughter before marrying me," explained Anthony, each word a thrown stone. "A daughter who was raised by another family. Now she has returned to the place that is hers, my house, and I expect everyone here to treat her with the respect she deserves." The silence was absolute. Even the birds seemed to have stopped singing. It was then that a voice rose from the middle of the small crowd. "I think that is very beautiful, Colonel. Doing justice after so much time." It was Dr. Thomas, the new doctor who had arrived in town 2 years ago to replace the late Dr. Oliver Manning. A young man, perhaps 30-something, dark hair, kind eyes. He approached, extended his hand first to Anthony, then to Helen. "Dr. Thomas Ferreira," he introduced himself. "Welcome to St. John's Valley, Miss Helen." Helen shook his hand with gratitude in her eyes. "Thank you, Doctor." Mrs. Caroline huffed, turned, and went down the stairs stomping. Other ladies followed her, but some stayed. Dr. Thomas, his wife, Mrs. Laura, the school teacher, some merchants, and they all greeted Helen with genuine politeness. On the way back to the estate, inside the buggy, Helen finally spoke. "Why did you tell them? You could have invented anything." "Because lies solve nothing," answered Anthony, holding the reins. Delilah lived in a lie her whole life. I won't make you live like that too. But now the whole town will know. Let them know. The truth is you are my daughter, and whoever doesn't like it can swallow it dry. Helen smiled. It was a small smile, but every day it got a little bigger, a little easier. Days turned into weeks. May turned into June. The cold of the ridge began to really bite, and the nights called for wool blankets and fire in the hearth. Helen was different, eating better, sleeping better. Even her face had gained a little color. She helped in the kitchen, tended the garden, fed the chickens. But what she really liked was staying in the library, reading Delilah's books. Sometimes Anthony found her there, wrapped in a shawl, a book open on her lap, eyes lost in the pages. "Is that one good?" he asked. "It's sad," answered Helen, "but beautiful. It speaks of a woman who had to choose between love and duty." "Delilah loved those sad books," commented Anthony with a half smile. "I think she understood those women," said Helen softly. "Because she was one of them." And Anthony had no answer, because it was true. It was on a cold Tuesday in June that the second letter arrived. Anthony was in the study reviewing the estate books when old Joe knocked on the door. "Colonel, there's an envelope here." It was on the corral gate. No one saw who left it. Anthony's heart froze. He took the envelope, the same brown paper, the same irregular pencil handwriting. He opened it with trembling fingers. "Colonel Anthony, the truth you discovered is only the beginning. Dr. Oliver Manning was not the only one. There were other girls, other families who silenced. The records are kept in a place you know well, the house that belonged to Judge Sebastian Roberts on Church Street. In the attic, in a metal box with the initials SR. Go there before someone destroys the evidence, before history repeats itself. And take Helen with you. She deserves to know everything." Anthony read and reread those lines. Other girls, other hidden crimes. A box in the attic of Judge Sebastian's house. A house that now belonged to his nephew, the lawyer Marcus Roberts, a grim and sullen man who rarely spoke to anyone. "Joe," called Anthony, "saddle 2 horses. Helen and I are going to town. Now, Colonel, but it's going to rain. I don't care if it hails. We are going now." He went up, knocked on Helen's door. She opened it with a book in her hand, surprised. "Another letter arrived," said Anthony. "And we need to go to town. Now." Fear passed through her eyes, but it was replaced by determination. "I'll get my shawl." They rode under a sky heavy with gray clouds. The cold wind cut their faces and brought the smell of rain. When they arrived at Church Street, the house of the late Judge Sebastian stood imposing. A colonial 2-story building, painted white and yellow, with wrought iron balconies. Anthony tied the horses and climbed the entrance steps. He knocked hard on the door. It was Marcus Roberts himself who answered. Tall, thin, black hair streaked with white, expression permanently sour. "Colonel Mason," he said coldly, "what a surprise. Mr. Roberts, I need to speak with you. It is urgent." The lawyer looked at Helen with suspicion. "About what?" "About your uncle. About Delilah. And about things that are kept in the attic of this house." Marcus Roberts' expression changed. He went pale, eyes narrowing. "I don't know what you are talking about." "I know you do," insisted Anthony. "And either you let me in or I break down this door. Choose." There was a long silence. Then Marcus took a step back. "Come in, but quickly. I don't want a scandal." They entered. The house smelled of mold and the past. The walls were covered with old portraits, judges, magistrates, doctors. The entire Roberts lineage, looking down from their golden frames. Marcus led them upstairs, through a narrow hallway, to a low door that led to the attic. He took a key from his pocket, opened it reluctantly. "What you are looking for is in there," he said. "I never had the courage to touch it. I only found this box when my uncle died. It was hidden behind old suitcases. I read some papers and put everything back. Some truths should not come to light." "All truths must come to light," retorted Anthony. He took the lamp Marcus offered and entered the attic with Helen behind him. The place was cramped, dusty, full of old furniture and stacked boxes. But way in the back, leaning against the wall, was a metal box with the initials SR engraved on the lid. Anthony knelt down, opened the box. Inside, documents, dozens of them, letters, certificates, handwritten records, and a black-covered notebook with the firm handwriting of Judge Sebastian. Anthony took the notebook, opened to the first page. Personal log, Judge Sebastian Roberts, 1910 to 1930. He leafed through, and then began to read aloud, so Helen could hear. March 1919. Delilah returned from the capital, pregnant. Says it was Dr. Oliver Manning at the Godfather's party. Since he got her drunk and forced himself on her. I cannot report him. He is too powerful. It would destroy our family. Spoke with Father Augustus. Decided the best is to give the child to a trusted family. Delilah cried for days on end. But it is for the best. It has to be. Anthony's voice trembled, but he continued. June 1921. Learned that Dr. Oliver did the same with the daughter of the merchant smith. The girl committed suicide, threw herself in the river. The family said it was an accident. I know it wasn't. August 1924. Another one, the pharmacist's niece. This time the family managed to marry the girl off quickly to a cousin. Pretended the child was premature. Dr. Oliver remains unpunished, untouchable. December 1928. Confronted Dr. Oliver at a club meeting. Said I knew. He laughed in my face. Said if I told anyone he would destroy my career, my family, everything. And I believed him. God forgive me, but I believed him. Anthony stopped reading. His hands were shaking so much he almost dropped the notebook. Helen was crying silently beside him, tears running down her dusty face. He knew, whispered Anthony. The judge knew everything and did nothing. He was afraid, said Helen. Her voice choked. He was afraid and chose to protect himself. Anthony closed the notebook, looked at the other letters in the box. There were at least 5 documented cases. 5 girls whose lives were destroyed. 5 families who silenced out of fear or shame. We need to take this, said Anthony. We need to show the whole town what this man did. No, Marcus Roberts' voice echoed behind them. He was at the attic entrance, pale, desperate. You cannot do that. It will destroy the family name. My uncle was a respected man. Your uncle was a coward, spat Anthony, standing up. A coward who protected a criminal for years. And these girls, these families, deserve justice. Justice? Marcus gave a bitter laugh. What justice? Dr. Oliver has been dead for 4 years. Who are you going to punish? Ghosts? His memory, answered Helen, also standing up. She wiped her tears, raised her chin. We are going to show everyone who he really was, and we are going to clear my mother's name and the other girls who were blamed for crimes they didn't commit. Marcus took a step forward, eyes shining with anger. If you leave here with that box, I will sue you for trespassing. Theft, defamation, sue me, said Anthony, picking up the box. But these letters will see the light of day, even if it's the last thing I do in my life. He passed by Marcus, pushing him slightly to the side. Helen followed. They went down the stairs, crossed the living room under the accusing gaze of the Roberts portraits, went out to the street. The rain had started. Thin, icy, soaking everything. Anthony tied the box to the saddle, helped Helen mount. "Where are we going?" she asked. "To the church," answered Anthony. "Father Augustus is going to have to answer for everything. And then we go to the newspaper. We're going to publish every name, every letter, every truth that damn notebook holds." They rode under the rain, up Church Street, toward the main square. But when they were reaching the square, they saw smoke, lots of smoke, coming from the direction of the church. Anthony spurred the horse. Helen followed. And when they rounded the corner and the parish church appeared in front of them, both stopped, horrified. The sacristy was in flames. The fire rose high, licking the stone walls, devouring the ancient wood of the door and windows. People ran from all sides with buckets of water, shouting, trying to control the flames that were spreading too fast. The church bell rang desperately, summoning everyone to help. Anthony dismounted in a jump, tossed the metal box to Helen. "Guard this with your life," he shouted over the noise. "Don't let anyone near it." He ran toward the church. Father Augustus was in the middle of the tumult, face covered in soot, coughing, shouting orders. "The records," shouted the priest. "Someone needs to save the parish records." Anthony grabbed him by the arm. "Father, what happened?" The priest turned, eyes wide with panic. "I don't know. I was in the confessional when I smelled smoke. When I ran to the sacristy, everything was already on fire. The books, Colonel, records of 100 years. Anthony looked at the flames. The sacristy where, a week ago, he had seen the 1919 registry. The registry that proved Helen's baptism. The registry with the note about Dr. Oliver Manning. "It was intentional," said Anthony, more to himself. "Someone set fire on purpose." "What? No, it can't be." But Anthony didn't wait for an answer. He ran to the side of the church where men formed a chain, passing buckets of water. He grabbed a bucket, threw water on the flames, grabbed another. The heat was infernal. The smoke burned his eyes and lungs. Helen had dismounted and stayed in the square, hugging the metal box, watching everything with horror. Around her, the whole town gathered. Mrs. Caroline, Dr. Thomas, the teacher, the merchants, the tenants who were in town that day, all helping or just watching, open-mouthed, while the sacristy of the parish church, religious heart of St. John's Valley, burned. It took almost 2 hours to control the fire. When finally the last flames were put out, only smoking rubble remained. The stone walls resisted, but everything inside had been consumed. The wood, the furniture, the record cabinet, and the books. All the parish books, baptisms, marriages, deaths. Decades of history turned to ash. Anthony entered the destroyed sacristy together with Father Augustus. The floor was covered in water and charred debris. The tall cabinet where the records were kept was reduced to twisted remains of burnt wood. The priest knelt, picked up a piece of scorched paper, and broke down in tears. 100 years, he whimpered. 100 years of records, lost. Anthony knelt beside him, picked up another fragment, part of a page from the 1919 book. But it was so burnt one could barely read 2 words. "Father," said Anthony softly, "this wasn't an accident. Someone wanted to destroy the evidence." The priest raised his face, eyes red, face marked with soot. "Evidence of what? Of what you and Judge Sebastian hid. Of Dr. Oliver's crimes. Of everything." The priest went pale. "Do you think that someone would do this?" "You said if I told, there would be terrible consequences," remembered Anthony. "I think you were right." Night fell over St. John's Valley with a heavy silence. The parish church, even without the sacristy, remained standing, its stone walls mute witnesses to secrets someone was very determined to keep buried. Anthony and Helen returned to the estate when it was already past 9 at night. They were soaked from the rain and the water used to fight the fire, exhausted, but carrying the metal box as if it were gold. Nancy was waiting in the kitchen, worried. "My God in heaven, what happened to you two?" "I'll explain later, Nancy," said Anthony. "Make some strong coffee, please, and something for us to eat." They went up to the study. Anthony locked the door, lit all the lamps, spread the contents of the box over the large rosewood table. Judge Sebastian's notebook, the letters, the certificates, everything was there, intact, safe from the flames that consumed the church records. "It was too much of a coincidence," said Helen, still trembling a little. "Us discovering these letters, and the same day the sacristy catches fire." "It wasn't coincidence," answered Anthony, leafing through the notebook. "It was someone who knew we were looking into this and wanted to erase the tracks. But they made a mistake." "What? They didn't know about this box. They burned the church records. But this here," he tapped the notebook, "is even more damning. Because it's not just an official record. It's the judge's own words, confessing he knew everything and chose to remain silent." Helen picked up one of the letters, started reading. It was addressed to Judge Sebastian, dated 1922, written by a desperate mother. "Your Excellency, I beg you to do something. My daughter, Amelia, is destroyed. She doesn't eat, doesn't speak, just cries. What that man did to her cannot go unpunished. You are a judge. You can do justice. Please, in the name of God, help us." And below in the judge's handwriting, a note. "Spoke with Dr. Oliver. He denied everything. Said the girl offered herself. Her word against his. Impossible to prove. Advised the family to seek a quick marriage for the girl. It is best for everyone." Helen let the letter fall onto the table, covered her mouth with her hand. Anthony saw tears running down her face again. "How many?" whispered Helen. "How many girls did he destroy?" Anthony counted the letters, the reports in the notebook, the notes. "At least 7, he said, voice hard. 7 that the judge recorded. Could have been more. And all silenced. All. They stayed there, in the dim light of the lamps, reading those reports of pain, abuse, and institutional cowardice." It was almost 11 at night when Nancy knocked on the door, bringing coffee and bread with butter. She placed the tray on the table, looked at the scattered papers, frowned. "What is all this, Colonel?" "The truth, Nancy," answered Anthony. "The truth they tried to hide for 30 years." Nancy crossed herself, murmured a prayer, and left, closing the door slowly. It was Helen who had the idea. "We need to publish this," she said, standing up and starting to pace from one side to the other. "Not just show it to a few people, publish it in the newspaper, so that the whole town, the whole state knows what happened. The paper in St. John is controlled by the important families," reminded Anthony. "I doubt they would publish something that exposes the Roberts and the Mannings. Then we send it to the newspaper in the capital, or Atlanta, bigger newspapers that aren't afraid of the families here." Anthony paused, thought. It was risky. It would be a huge scandal. It would destroy reputations, open old wounds, turn the town upside down. But it was the right thing to do. "All right," he agreed. "Tomorrow morning I go to the Capitol. I'll take the notebook and the letters to the Daily Courier. I know the editor there. He owes me a favor. I'm going with you." "No, it's dangerous. If someone burned the sacristy to hide evidence, they might try something worse." "Exactly why I'm going," insisted Helen, stopping in front of him, eyes steady. "Because I am the living proof. I am one of the victims of this story. and I'm going to tell my side. I'm going to look the editor in the eye and say, I am Helen, daughter of Delilah Roberts, and my mother was one of the women Dr. Oliver Manning destroyed. They won't be able to ignore that. Anthony looked at her and saw, perhaps for the first time, not the fragile girl who appeared at his gate 3 weeks ago, but a strong woman, determined, ready to fight. All right, he conceded. We go together. They slept little that night. Anthony stayed in the study, organizing the documents, writing a detailed report of everything they had discovered. Helen stayed in her room, rereading Delilah's letter, preparing herself mentally for what was coming. As dawn brought a clear and cold sky, Anthony saddled the buggy, kept the metal box under the seat, covered with a tarp. He also took his hunting shotgun, just as a precaution. Helen came down wearing the best dress she had, hair up in a bun, an expression of determined calm on her face. Nancy saw them off at the door with a tight hug and a murmured blessing. Old Joe offered to go along, but Anthony refused. I need you to stay here, looking after the estate. If anything happens to us, you go to Dr. Thomas and give him this letter, said Anthony, handing over a sealed envelope. Inside are instructions on what to do with the documents. Nothing is going to happen, Colonel, said Old Joe, but took the letter anyway. The trip from St. John's Valley to the capital took about 5 hours by buggy. Anthony drove the horses at a steady trot, but not too fast. The dirt road cut through farms, past small villages, crossed wooden bridges over streams. They spoke little. Helen watched the landscape, the mountains in the distance, the fields that stretched as far as the eye could see. Anthony kept his eyes on the road, alert to any suspicious movement. They were halfway there, passing through a denser patch of woods, when they heard the sound of horses behind them. Anthony pulled the reins, looked back. 3 riders were coming at a gallop, kicking up dust. Even from afar, one could see they weren't common travelers. They came with purpose. They came fast. Hold on tight, said Anthony to Helen, and whipped the horses. The buggy gave a jolt and took off. Helen clung to the seat, the metal box banging on the floor. The riders behind accelerated too, gaining ground. Stop, shouted a voice behind them. Stop in the name of the law. But Anthony didn't stop. Not when he was certain those men were no law at all. He drove the horses harder, the buggy swaying dangerously on the bumps of the road. A shot cut through the air. Helen screamed. Anthony ducked his head, kept driving. Another shot, this one hitting the back of the buggy, chipping the wood. They're going to kill us, shouted Helen. Not if I kill them first. Anthony pulled the buggy to the side, stopping in a skid, grabbed the shotgun, jumped out, used the buggy as cover. Helen threw herself on the floor, taking shelter too. The 3 riders approached, and then Anthony recognized them. They weren't lawmen. They were hired thugs, the kind that did dirty work for whoever paid well. One of them Anthony recognized, Black Jack, a known henchman of the lawyer Marcus Roberts. Hand over the box, shouted Jack, stopping a few yards away, revolver pointed. Hand it over and no one gets hurt. Over my dead body, answered Anthony, aiming the shotgun. That can be arranged, Colonel. The silence that followed was tense. 3 armed men against 1, and a defenseless girl in the middle. The odds were not good. But then a different noise. Horse hooves, many horses, coming from the opposite direction. Everyone turned. Appearing around the bend of the road, a group of 6 riders. And in front, mounted on a white horse, was Dr. Thomas. Thought you folks might need some company, shouted the doctor, smiling. With him came Old Joe, 2 estate hands, the school teacher, and surprisingly, Father Augustus, mounted on a clumsy horse, but determined. Black Jack and his men looked at each other, 6 against 3. The odds had changed. "This isn't over," growled Jack, but he was already pulling the reins of his horse. "You're going to regret this." And they galloped back, disappearing in a cloud of dust. Anthony lowered the shotgun, took a deep breath. Dr. Thomas, dismounted, approached. "Nancy sought us out this morning. Said you had left for the capital with important documents," he explained. "Thought best to ensure you got there in one piece." "Thank you, Doctor," said Anthony, shaking the doctor's hand firmly. "Thank you, truly." Father Augustus also got down from his horse, stumbling a little. "Colonel," he said, voice tired, "I spent the whole night thinking about everything that happened, about all the years I spent silent. And I came to the conclusion that it is time to do the right thing. I'm going with you to the capital. I'm going to testify. I'm going to tell everything I know." Anthony looked at the priest, that old man who had carried heavy secrets for so long, and nodded. "Then let's go," he said. "We go together." And so, with the unlikely escort of a doctor, a foreman, 2 farmhands, a teacher, and a repentant priest, Anthony and Helen continued the journey to the capital. They carried with them a metal box full of explosive truths, and the determination that, whatever the cost, those truths would see the light of day. The storm approaching St. John's Valley was just beginning. But this time, it was a storm of justice, and nothing and no one was going to be able to stop it. They arrived in the capital when the sun was already past noon. The city was much larger than St. John's Valley. Wide streets, imposing mansions, electric streetcars, movement of people and carriages everywhere. The smell of roasted coffee permeated the air, mixed with chimney smoke from the factories growing on the outskirts. Anthony knew this city well. He had studied law there in the 1910s, frequented the same social circles, the same clubs, and he knew Ralph Mitchell, editor of the Daily Courier. Since that time, they had been classmates, shared beers and heated discussions about politics and justice. The newspaper was in a 3-story building on Barron Street. The huge windows let light in, and from the ground floor rose the rhythmic noise of the printing presses. Anthony tied the horses, took the metal box, and entered, followed by Helen and Father Augustus. Dr. Thomas and the others stayed outside, standing guard. The reception smelled of ink and paper. A young lad in suspenders and rolled-up shirt sleeves looked at the group with curiosity. "Good morning. Can I help?" "I need to speak with Ralph Mitchell," said Anthony. "It is urgent." "Do you have an appointment?" "No, but tell him Colonel Anthony Mason is here. He will want to see me." The lad hesitated, but something in Anthony's posture convinced him. He ran up the stairs. 2 minutes later, he came down accompanied by a man in his 50s. Gray hair, round-framed glasses, cigarette hanging from the corner of his mouth. "Anthony Mason!" exclaimed Ralph, opening his arms. "How long has it been? Must be some, 20 years? At least," answered Anthony, shaking his friend's hand. "Ralph, I need a favor. A big favor." Ralph's expression turned serious. He looked at Helen, at the priest, at the metal box Anthony was holding. "Let's go to my office." They went up to the 3rd floor. Ralph's office was an organized mess of papers, books, cups of cold coffee, and full ashtrays. Through the windows, one could see the cathedral on top of the hill. Ralph closed the door, indicated the chairs. "Sit. Tell me everything." And Anthony told him. Started with the anonymous letter he received 3 weeks ago. Helen's arrival. The discovery of the violence Delilah suffered. The visit to Father Augustus. The box in Judge Sebastian's attic. The notebook with the confessions. The other victims. The fire in the sacristy. The attempted ambush on the road. While he spoke, he took the documents out of the box and spread them on Ralph's table. The notebook, the letters, the certificates, everything. Ralph picked up the notebook, started reading. His expression changed from curiosity to shock, then to contained fury. He read page after page in silence, only the creak of the chair and the distant noise of the printers filling the room. When he finished, he took off his glasses, rubbed his tired eyes. "My God," he murmured. "Oliver Manning. I knew him. He came here a few times, was a friend of the governor, had influence even in the state capital. No one ever suspected. Because no one wanted to see," said Father Augustus, voice heavy with guilt. "Myself included. We chose silence because it was easier, safer. But it wasn't right." Ralph looked at Helen. "And you, miss, you are the daughter of one of the victims?" "I am," answered Helen, raising her chin. "My mother was Delilah Roberts, and I grew up without knowing who she was, without knowing where I came from, because society preferred to hide the truth rather than do justice." Ralph nodded slowly, picked up one of the letters, read aloud. "Your Excellency, my daughter is 16 years old. She was an innocent girl. Now she is pregnant and in disgrace. Doctor, Oliver says she lied, that she invented everything. But I am a mother. I know when my daughter speaks the truth. Please, do something. Please." He placed the letter on the table carefully, as if it were a sacred thing. "This here," said Ralph, looking at everyone, "this here is pure dynamite. If I publish it, it's going to explode. It's going to destroy families, reputations. It's going to turn the interior upside down." "I know," said Anthony, "but it needs to be done. These women deserve to have their stories told, deserve to have their names cleared." "And the guilty?" asked Ralph. "Oliver Manning is dead. Judge Sebastian too. Who are we going to punish?" "Their memory," answered Helen, voice firm. "And the structures that allowed this to happen. The men who knew and kept quiet. The families who chose reputation over justice. This hypocritical society that blames the victims and protects the powerful." Ralph looked at her with something akin to admiration. "You have courage, miss, and you're right." He stood up, walked to the window, stared at the cathedral for long seconds, then turned. "I'll publish it. Full page, maybe 2, with all the names, all the details. I'll use the notebook, the letters, your testimony. It will come out in Sunday's edition, 3 days from now." "Thank you, Ralph," said Anthony, feeling a weight lift from his shoulders. "Don't thank me yet," warned Ralph. "When this is published, you are going to become targets. The families involved will deny everything, will hire lawyers, will try to sue the paper and you. They will say it is lies, defamation, revenge. Let them try," said Anthony. "We have proof. Documents written by the judge himself. And I will testify," added Father Augustus. "I will tell everything I know. About the secret baptisms, about the families forced into silence, about the pressure Dr. Oliver exerted on all of us." Ralph nodded. "Then it is decided. Leave the documents with me. I'll need about 2 days to write the story, verify facts, prepare everything. Come back Saturday afternoon to review before printing." They agreed, left the box with Ralph, who locked it in the newspaper's safe, and went back down to the street. Dr. Thomas and the others were waiting, anxious. "Well?" asked the doctor. "It's going to be published," answered Anthony. "Sunday, for the whole state to read." Dr. Thomas smiled. "Then we better get back to St. John and prepare for the earthquake." Folks, write justice for Delilah in the comments if you also think these stories needed to come to light. Which part of this story touched you the most so far? Tell us. The trip back was quieter. No one followed them. No one tried to ambush them. But Anthony knew it was just the calm before the storm. When that story was published, all hell would break loose. They arrived at the Oak Creek estate as it was getting dark. Nancy was waiting in the kitchen with a hot dinner: stewed chicken, rice, beans, sautéed kale. They ate in silence, exhausted from the trip and the day's tension. After dinner, Anthony went up to the study. He needed to think, plan the next steps. But when he lit the lamp, he saw that something was different. There was an envelope on his desk. His heart raced. He picked up the envelope with trembling hands. Same irregular handwriting, same brown paper. He opened it. "Colonel Anthony, you did the right thing, but now you need to know one more truth, the most painful of all. Delilah did not die of cancer. She was poisoned. Someone in St. John's Valley wanted to silence her before she decided to tell everything. Seek Dr. Thomas. He has suspicions, but was afraid to speak. Now that you are exposing everything, he can confirm. The truth is in the report he hid. In his clinic's cabinet. Red folder. Code 1944. Delilah knew too much, and someone killed her for it." Anthony read the letter 3 times. 4, 5. The words danced in front of him, refusing to make sense. Poisoned. Delilah. His Delilah had not died of cancer. She had been murdered. He stood up so fast, the chair tipped over backward with a crash. He stumbled down the stairs, past the kitchen where Nancy was washing dishes, went out to the yard. Dr. Thomas was preparing his horse to return to town. "Doctor," shouted Anthony, "I need to speak with you. Now." The doctor turned, saw the expression on Anthony's face, and paled. "What is it?" Anthony showed the letter. Dr. Thomas read it, and for the first time since Anthony had met him, he saw genuine fear in the young doctor's eyes. How? Yes. I have given you a letter. Howleyan children had repeated everything by Dr. Thomas. How have you been? How did you get this? So it is true? Anthony's voice was a growl. Delilah was poisoned? Dr. Thomas looked around, checking if anyone else was nearby. Then he grabbed Anthony by the arm and pulled him into the stable, away from curious ears. "Listen," said the doctor softly, urgently. "When I arrived in St. John's Valley 2 years ago, Dr. Oliver was already dead, but everyone spoke of him as if he were a saint. Benefactor, savior, hero. I started attending at the clinic that was his, and I found files, many files. Files of what? Of patients, treatments, but also personal notes. Things he shouldn't have written but did. Meetings with young girls. Mentions of resolved problems. Payments to families to keep silence. He documented everything, Colonel, as if he were immune, as if no one would ever find out. And Delilah?" Dr. Thomas took a deep breath. "Your wife died in March 1944. I wasn't here yet. It was Dr. Paul, the doctor from Silver Springs, who cared for her in the last months. He diagnosed stomach cancer. But when I arrived and started reviewing the cases, I found something strange in her file." "What?" Dr. Paul had requested an autopsy, a rare thing, especially for an important family like yours. But he insisted, said the symptoms didn't match common cancer. The autopsy was done by the coroner from the capital. And the report? The report pointed to extremely high levels of arsenic in her body. Anthony's world collapsed again. Arsenic, rat poison, poison that killed slowly, mimicking symptoms of natural diseases. Why did no one tell me? Anthony's voice was a broken whisper. Because the report disappeared. Dr. Paul told me he handed a copy to the sheriff at the time, Sheriff Octavius. but the sheriff archived the case, said there wasn't enough proof, that it could have been accidental contamination. That the Mason family was too respected to be stained with suspicions, and the report vanished, or rather was hidden. But you said you have a copy. Red folder, code 1944. Dr. Thomas nodded. When Dr. Paul died last year, his widow gave me his personal files, said her husband had left instructions. If anything happened to him, I should keep those documents. One of them was a copy of Delilah's report. I kept it, but never had the courage to show anyone, until now. Who did this? Roared Anthony. Who poisoned my wife? I don't know, but I know that 3 months before dying, Delilah sought out Father Augustus, asked to make a long confession. The priest never told me what was said, seal of the confessional, but said she was very distressed, very scared. Said she wanted to tell a truth she had kept for years, but was afraid of the consequences. Anthony closed his eyes. Delilah. His Delilah had decided to tell about Helen, about Dr. Oliver, about everything. And someone killed her to stop it. Who knew? He asked, opening his eyes. Who knew she was thinking of speaking? I can't be sure. But, Dr. Thomas hesitated. But Sheriff Octavius was Marcus Roberts' cousin. And Marcus has always been obsessed with protecting the family name. He knew about Helen. He knew about the scandal it would be if the truth came to light. Anthony felt the rage rise up his throat like lava. Marcus Roberts, the lawyer who had tried to stop them from taking the box, the man who had sent thugs after them on the road, the nephew of the coward judge who had protected a monster for years. He killed Delilah, whispered Anthony, or had her killed. I have no proof, warned Dr. Thomas. Only suspicions, and a report that disappeared from official files. But you have the copy. I do, at the clinic, locked in the confidential file cabinet. Then let's go get it, now. The murder has been completed. Let him find out, spat Anthony. That man took my wife from me, took a mother from Helen, and still thinks he's going to get away with it. We are going to add it to the newspaper story. Dr. Thomas looked at Anthony, at that 50-something-year-old man who in 3 weeks had lost and gained a daughter, discovered his wife was a victim of violence, and now knew she had been murdered, and saw there was no point arguing. All right, said the doctor, but we go carefully and armed. They went on horseback, just the two of them, along the dark road connecting the estate to the town. The moon was covered by clouds, and the path was lit only by the lanterns they carried. The night cold cut like a blade. Dr. Thomas's clinic was in a single-story house on Commerce Street, near the square. When they arrived, everything was dark and silent. Dr. Thomas took out the key, opened the door. They entered. The smell of alcohol and ether permeated the air. Dr. Thomas lit a lamp, led Anthony to a small office in the back. There was a tall iron cabinet, locked with a padlock. The doctor took another key, opened it. Inside, shelves full of folders, organized by year and number. Dr. Thomas ran his finger along the spines until finding the red folder marked 1944, confidential. He took the folder, placed it on the desk, opened it, and there it was, the autopsy report of Delilah Roberts Mason, dated March 28, 1944, signed by Dr. Albert Fields, coroner of the capital. Anthony read with trembling hands. Toxicological analysis revealed presence of arsenic in lethal concentration in gastric tissue, liver, and kidneys. Pattern consistent with progressive poisoning over 2 to 3 months. Cause of death: multiple organ failure caused by arsenic intoxication. Conclusion: Non-natural death. Criminal investigation recommended. Below, a handwritten note. Copy delivered to Sheriff Octavius Manning on 30/30/1944, awaiting opening of inquiry. Octavius Manning. The surname was no coincidence. Was he related to Dr. Oliver? Asked Anthony. Nephew, confirmed Dr. Thomas. And as I said, cousin of Marcus Roberts. All these people are connected. They protect each other for generations. Anthony closed the report, hugged the folder against his chest. I'm taking this to the Capitol tomorrow myself. Ralph needs to see it. Needs to include it in the story. Agreed. But Colonel? Dr. Thomas placed a hand on Anthony's shoulder. This will implicate the sheriff. Will implicate Marcus, maybe others. They will deny, will fight, will try to destroy you and Helen. Let them try. They left the clinic, locked everything. They were about to mount when they heard voices. Turned around. From the corner, a group of men approached, lit torches in hand. 6, 7, maybe 8. And in front, unmistakable in the orange light of the torches, was Marcus Roberts. Colonel Mason, said the lawyer, voice icy. Thought I'd find you here. Always so predictable. Anthony and Dr. Thomas put their backs against the clinic wall. Anthony had the shotgun. Dr. Thomas had a revolver. But it was 2 against 8. What do you want, Marcus? Asked Anthony. That report. And the metal box you took from my house. Return it and no one gets hurt. You killed Delilah, said Anthony, and it wasn't a question. Marcus smiled. A cold, reptilian smile. I didn't kill anyone, Colonel. Your wife died of cancer. That is documented. What you have there is a fraudulent report, created by an incompetent doctor who wanted to cause trouble. Liar. Prove it. Where are the witnesses? Where is the proof besides that paper? Sheriff Octavius investigated at the time and found nothing. Case closed. Because you closed it. Because Delilah was going to expose everything and you couldn't let her. Marcus's mask cracked a little. The rage appeared underneath. My family built this town, he hissed. My uncle, Judge Sebastian, was one of the most important men in the interior. And you think I'm going to let a notebook full of ravings of a senile old man destroy everything? Think I'm going to let the memory of Dr. Oliver, a man who saved hundreds of lives, be stained by accusations of young girls who probably offered themselves and then regretted it? You are a monster, whispered Dr. Thomas. Just like your uncle. Just like Dr. Oliver. I am a man who protects what is his, and you, Doctor, are interfering in matters that do not concern you. Marcus made a sign. The men around him approached, forming a semicircle. Some had machetes, others pieces of wood. One had an old shotgun. Last chance, said Marcus. The report. And tell me where the box is. It's in a place you will never reach, answered Anthony. It's in the safe of the Daily Courier in the Capitol. And Sunday, the whole state is going to know what your family did. Marcus's face contorted with fury. Then so be it, but you won't live to see that publication. He raised his hand, about to give the signal to attack. That was when a voice cut through the night. I wouldn't do that if I were you, Mr. Roberts. Everyone turned. From the main street, another group approached. And this group was bigger. 15, maybe 20 people. In front came Helen, holding a high lantern. Beside her, Father Augustus. Behind, Old Joe, Nancy, the estate hands. And surprisingly, Mrs. Laura, Dr. Thomas's wife, and the school teacher, and various town merchants Anthony knew by sight. What is this? Reeves. Marcus looked around, confused, feeling control of the situation slip away. Helen took a step forward, raised her voice for everyone to hear. This is the truth coming to light, sir. It is the town finally opening its eyes. I am Helen Roberts Smith, daughter of Delilah Roberts, and I came here to say in front of everyone, My mother was a victim. She and many others. And the man you call benefactor, Dr. Oliver Manning, was a predator. A criminal you protected for decades. Lies, shouted Marcus. This girl is an imposter, an opportunist wanting to stain the name of honorable families. Then explain this, said Father Augustus, taking a step forward and raising a book. It was another parish register, older, that he managed to rescue from his personal archive before the fire. Secret baptisms, children given to families, all documented, all true. And I, as priest of this community, confess my cowardice in having remained silent for so long. A murmur ran through those present. Marcus looked around and saw he was losing. He saw in people's faces doubt, shock, and worse. He was starting to see belief. You have no proof of anything, he insisted, desperate now. We do, said Anthony, raising the red folder. We have the report that proves Delilah was poisoned. We have Judge Sebastian's notebook confessing everything. We have letters from desperate mothers. We have testimonies. And Sunday, all this will be published for everyone to see. The silence that fell was absolute. Marcus looked at his men, realizing that even they were starting to hesitate. He looked at the growing crowd because more people were appearing, drawn by the commotion. He looked at Helen, at that 28-year-old girl who had Delilah's face and the courage he would never have. And then, for the first time in his life, Marcus Roberts didn't know what to do. This isn't over, he said finally, voice trembling. I will sue. I will use every resource. I will... You will do what? The voice came from behind the crowd. It was Mrs. Caroline, the gossip from the store, tears running down her face. Will you silence one more time, like you silenced my niece? Amelia was 16, Mr. Roberts. 16. And after that monster did what he did to her, she threw herself in the river. My sister never recovered. And I kept this secret for 20 years because they told me it was better that way. But it isn't better. It never was. The confession exploded like a bomb. Other voices began to rise. An elderly woman told about her granddaughter. The man about his daughter. Another about his wife who died of sadness years ago. Secrets kept for decades began to gush like water from a broken dam. Marcus retreated, stumbled, went pale. His men moved away from him as if he were a leper. And then, without another word, he turned and ran down the dark street, disappearing into the night. No one followed him. No one needed to. The truth had won. The sun was rising when finally everyone dispersed. Anthony, Helen, Dr. Thomas, and Father Augustus returned to the estate, exhausted but relieved. Nancy prepared strong coffee and hot bread. They sat at the kitchen table while the dawn light entered through the windows. What happens now? Asked Helen. The story will be published, answered Anthony. The report will be included, and justice, even if late, will be done. At least in history, in memory, in the name of Delilah and the other women. And Marcus? He will answer, said Father Augustus. Maybe not criminally, he is too smart, covered his tracks. But socially, morally, he is already destroyed. No one in St. John's Valley will want to associate with him after this. Dr. Thomas nodded, took a sip of coffee. And the families of the victims will finally be able to speak. Finally, cry. Finally have their grief recognized. Helen looked out the window, at the sun rising over the fields. Mama Delilah can rest now, she said softly. She didn't die in vain. Her truth will save other women. It will prevent this from happening again. Anthony took Helen's hand across the table, squeezed it with affection. She would be proud of you, he said, so proud. And for the first time in 3 years, since he buried Delilah, Anthony felt she was truly at peace. He felt he had done, Finally, what she would have wanted him to do: exposed the truth, protected her daughter, and given voice to the women who were silenced. The storm had passed, and on the other side, there was sun. The sun of that first Sunday after the revelation rose red over the fields, tinting everything with a warm glow that seemed, finally, to announce a new beginning. The Mason estate woke up slowly, with the smell of bread baking in the wood stove, and the fresh wind passing through the grove, pushing the leaves as if wanting to blow away the shadow of the last years for good. But even with the calm of the morning, there was something new in the air, a clean silence, different, full of possibilities. Helen was the first to come down. Her bare feet touched the cold kitchen floor, and she shivered slightly, but smiled, smelling the strong aroma of brewed coffee rising from the clay pot Nancy was holding. The light passed through the cracks of the shutter, drawing golden stripes on the young woman's face. "Sleep well, miss?" asked Nancy, serving coffee like one offers a blessing. "Better than in the last 3 years," answered Helen, and her voice had a softness no one there had heard before. She sat at the table. The old bench creaked, a familiar and cozy sound, reminding her that here, in this house, there was too much history to be erased. While biting a piece of hot bread, Helen looked around, and for the first time, didn't feel the weight of the village's judgment. She felt only home. Anthony came down shortly after, adjusting his hat with an automatic gesture. He had deep circles under his eyes from sleepless nights, but something different shone in his eyes. A late piece, but true. He approached the table and ran his hand through Helen's hair, like a father reuniting with a lost daughter. "Today is the day," he said, sitting down. "The story must already be circulating. When the paper arrives, all of St. John's Valley will know the truth." Helen took a deep breath. "I'm ready." "I know you are." Outside, the sound of dragging footsteps approached. It was Father Augustus, carrying a small wooden box. The old man was haggard, his face lined by the guilt of years. But there was firmness in every movement. "Brought something I think you should see," he said. Anthony signaled for him to enter. The priest placed the box on the table carefully, like someone depositing a newborn baby. Opened it slowly. Inside, there was an old rosary, an envelope, and a small carved wooden image. "This here," said the priest, "belonged to your mother, Helen. Delilah gave it to me the day before she died. Asked me to give it to you when the time came, and I took too long to find the courage." Helen's hands trembled. She touched the rosary, felt the cold of the beads passing between her fingers, then opened the envelope. It was a simple letter, the handwriting crooked, hurried. "My Helen, if one day you return, I want you to know I loved you from the first instant, that I fought for you as I could, even when no one listened to me. I didn't let your name die, and if I am no longer here, seek Colonel Anthony. He will take care of you better than any person in this world. Mama." Helen covered her mouth. The tears fell, hot, salty, running down her skin like a river finally released after years dammed up. She thought of me until the end." Anthony put his hand on her shoulder. "She did, every second." Outside, they heard the clatter of a horse. Old Joe appeared in the yard, kicking up dust. "Colonel, the paper arrived. It's all over the square." Helen's heart raced. She looked at Anthony, who stood up slowly, feeling the weight of that historic moment. "Let's go," he said. "It is time to see what we did together." The square of St. John was packed. People of all ages held the Daily Courier in their hands, commenting loudly, pointing, crying, shaking their heads in disbelief. The noise was intense. Horseshoes hitting the stone ground, children running, Voices of indignant people, murmuring prayers, venting memories buried for decades. In the center of the square, Father Augustus read aloud excerpts from the story, while Dr. Thomas answered questions. The newspaper stamped on the cover, in huge letters, "The truth behind the Delilah case. Report reveals poisoning documents expose abuses of Dr. Oliver Manning." And right below, in a sharp photo, Helen Roberts Smith breaks 28 years of silence. When Helen and Anthony arrived, the crowd parted. Murmurs ran through the people like wind in a cane field. It's her, Delilah's daughter, the girl who had courage. God bless that child. The first person to approach was Mrs. Caroline, but this time there was no poison in her look, only regret. "Miss," she said, wiping her face with her apron, "forgive me for the years of sharp tongue. If I knew the truth, if someone had spoken, my niece might still be alive." Helen held her hands. "We can't erase the past, Mrs. Caroline, but we can prevent it from happening again." The woman broke down crying and hugged Helen tight, like someone thanking and asking for forgiveness at the same time. Anthony watched from afar, feeling his chest fill with something he hadn't felt since Delilah's death. Pride and hope. Suddenly, hurried steps. It was Sheriff Octavius, holding a paper. "Colonel, Helen," he said, adjusting his hat in a novice gesture. "The mayor called an urgent meeting. They are going to open an official investigation." And he blinked, insecure. They also opened a review process of the actions of the former Judge Sebastian and Marcus. "Everything you brought changed everything." Helen took a deep breath, finally feeling the weight lift from her shoulders. "It was what Mama wanted," she murmured. The church bell rang, not the desperate toll of the fire, but a clear, firm sound announcing change. Time passed. 3 months later, the Mason estate was different. The crops prospered like never before. The big house had a fresh coat of paint. On the porch, white flowers Helen had planted bloomed under the gentle afternoon shade. The tenants passed by, greeting Anthony with renewed respect. Life, gradually, had found its rhythm. Helen worked at the village school, teaching farm children to read. The old teacher, now her ally, gave space, taught with her, learned with her. And Helen discovered she had a vocation for guiding other lives, as Delilah had guided hers, even from a distance. One afternoon, Anthony appeared with 2 small mugs of hot coffee. "We did it, Helen," he said, sitting beside her on the porch steps. The investigation concluded everything. Delilah's name was cleared. The new record was published yesterday in the official Gazette. She was not only exonerated, but recognized as a victim. Helen clutched Delilah's rosary hanging around her neck. "Mama can rest for real now." "She can, and you too." The wind passed lightly, bringing the smell of wet earth. A flock of swallows cut the sky, sketching dark lines against the sunset. Helen rested her head on Anthony's shoulder, not as a biological daughter, but as someone who found a home where she never imagined one could exist. "Thank you for everything, Colonel. I'm not Colonel to you, just Anthony. And I will be here as long as you want to stay." She smiled, a tranquil, luminous smile. The following Sunday, the whole town gathered in the square again, but this time, not to silence pain. And yes, to celebrate memory. Father Augustus, in a new cassock, opened the ceremony. "Today, in the name of truth and the faith we carry, we dedicate the new reading room of the Municipal Library to Delilah Roberts." The plaque shone under the sun. Delilah Roberts' Room, in memory of the women who could not speak. Helen held Anthony's hand. The people applauded. Children ran through the yard. Townspeople brought cakes, biscuits, cornbread, as if the event were a great baptism. And in a way, it was. The baptism of a new era. Even Mrs. Caroline organized a sweets table, proud. When the ceremony ended, Father Augustus called Helen aside. "Miss, I need to show you something." He led her to the small chapel behind the church. Inside, cool and silent, he handed her an envelope. "Arrived yesterday. It's from Amelia's family." Helen opened it. It was a thank you letter, written by the girl's mother. "Thank you for giving my daughter her voice back. Thank you for doing what no one had the courage to do. Now she can rest." Helen closed her eyes, felt Anthony's hand land on her back. "You changed lives, Helen, just like your mother would have, if she had the chance." She turned to him, eyes shining. "We changed, Anthony, together." Outside, the square buzzed with joy, life, and rebirth. The town that once judged her now welcomed her as one of their own. It was, finally, the beginning of a new story. That night, before sleeping, Helen went out to the yard. The sky was clear, dotted with bright stars. She held the rosary to her chest and took a deep breath, feeling the gentle breeze brush her skin. "Mama," she murmured, "we did it." And for the first time since returning to St. John's Valley, she felt Delilah was there. Not as pain, not as absence, but as a light, loving presence, illuminating everything. Helen smiled at the dark sky and went back inside the house, to the life she was rebuilding, to the people she loved, to the future she could finally imagine. Her and Anthony's journey didn't end there, but for the first time in decades, it began in peace. If you liked this story, leave a like, subscribe to the channel, and share with someone who loves good narratives. Click on the next story to continue traveling through the interior. What did you think of this story? Signed,